Okay guys, I am very excited about this next project. I think it's a lot of fun. I hope you'll enjoy it, and it's pretty simple to start out and we can get a little bit more complicated later in the project. So to start this, we're gonna need a ruler, a pencil, and an eraser. If you don't have your visual journal, then you're going to find a blank piece of paper to work with. So if you have the thicker, heavy white paper left in your folder, I would recommend you use that. If you don't, then you can go ahead and use the thinner white copy paper. But if you choose to use the thinner white copy paper, you're probably not going to want to use watercolors for it. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is, if you are using the thick white paper, you're going to fold it in half so that it's more of the same size as your visual journal. So I'm just taking the top, matching it up with the bottom, and then folding that firmly across the top there. So I'm pressing that down. Okay, so once you have it folded, you're gonna follow along with the rest of the steps that we're gonna do in the visual journal. There may be some adjustments here and there. I'll try and hop between the visual journal and this paper just to show you there's really only one step different to begin with. Okay, so I'm gonna move that aside and put my visual journal back on here. So using your visual journal, you need to make sure that you have a sheet or a page that's clean, and then behind it, here and here also need to be blank. So you need essentially 2 blank pages to do this, okay? So you can't do, let's see, let me find a page in my visual journal. So I wouldn't want to work on this page, which is blank, because I would be cutting, eventually there's going to be some cutting involved. I would be cutting a hole in this page, which means I would be cutting out part of my visual journal, and the page behind that has work on it, okay? So make sure that when you pick your page, that's a nice drawing by my little 5-year-old son, when you pick your page, make sure that you have the blank page, there's nothing on the back of it, and the page behind that one is also blank, and that there's nothing on the back of that page, okay? If you don't have that situation, again, you're gonna find a sheet of the thicker white paper and fold it in half and just make sure there's nothing on either side yet, that it's a completely new sheet of paper. Okay, so now that we've gotten that out of the way, that's really important. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to divide our paper in half. So I would recommend a ruler. If you don't have a ruler, it's not the end of the world. You could certainly sketch this out and estimate. So our visual journal is going to be turned horizontally. So our wires are going to go this way on our book, and we're going to divide at 4 inches. So we're just going to make a mark at 4 inches, which is right here. We're then going to scoot our ruler down to the bottom of our paper and measure 4 inches at the bottom as well. And we'll connect those 2 points with our ruler to start out. Okay. Now, I highly suggest that this is a very light line. This is kind of more of a line to just help us get our spacing and proportions right, okay? So this line eventually is gonna go away, so don't draw it super dark, all right? So let's hop over to the blank sheet of paper, the thicker white paper that we folded, and let's go ahead and do the same thing on here, but we're gonna use different measurements for this. This is 9 inches across. This is a sheet of 9 by 12 paper. So we're gonna measure at 4.5. So we find 4.5. We're gonna make a mark. We're gonna do the same thing on the bottom. I'm gonna put my ruler across it, and I'm gonna measure at 4.5. And then again, I'm gonna lightly connect these because, again, this line is eventually going to get erased, and we don't want it super dark. Okay, so pretty easy to begin with. I'm gonna set this aside. From this point on, everything I do in the visual journal, you would also do here. Okay, so let's put the visual journal back on the screen. Here we go. And what we're gonna be doing is we're gonna be drawing a very simple door. But before I do the door, I want to map out a little bit of space for the floor, or put a border across the bottom that would be the floor in my work. So I'm going to make sure, I'm going to give it about 1/2 inch. So I'm going to come over here. And again, if you don't have a ruler, you can go ahead and estimate these things. They certainly don't have to be perfect. But if you want to follow along with me and you do have a ruler, I'm marking 1/2 inch here. Okay, and as always, you know, lighter is better. This line will stay. It will not get erased. Okay, so we've got that put in. And then the next step is to draw a door into this work of art. Now, we want this door to take up a significant portion of this space, okay? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna start by sketching out the door, and then if we have room, we'll put a border around the door, okay? So the first thing we're going to do is we're gonna draw a tall rectangle. So I'm gonna just lightly sketch this out. If you want to use a pencil, you can. I'm gonna kind of just map it out with some sketched lines first. I can always go back in with a ruler later and straighten this up. So I want to leave some room at the top. So I'm going to leave about 1/2 inch across the top. And I'm going to bring this side in a little bit. Okay, so this is kind of me mapping it out. From here, I'm going to sketch in another rectangle inside of the larger one I just drew. Okay, so that's just kind of a rough sketch. So we're gonna leave this as our border for our door, and the actual door is gonna happen in here. Okay, so once you feel like you've got that mapped out, you can go back in and kind of straighten or clean up those lines if you want. I still wouldn't do it super dark, just because if you make a mistake, you want to be able to erase it. Pretty simple reasoning. All right. So I'm just going to come over here and kind of clean up this line. Now that I've got a better idea of where I want it. Okay. I'm going to go across the top. Okay. All right, so the next thing I'm going to do, those lines are cleaned up, as I am going to try and keep the border around the door the same width the whole way around, but I'm not going to measure it. You can if you wanted to. If you want to be really precise, you can. I'm not worrying about being super precise. This is a drawing. It's not an architectural drawing. It's just a drawing. So I'm just going to eyeball this. So these are about the same size. And I want the top to be about the same width as well. So again, I'm just eyeballing here. Try and keep your line parallel. Okay, so I've just got that sketched in lightly. A little bit more refined than what I started out with, and again, I can go in and, you know, clean these lines up towards the end. Okay, so we've got the border around the door. We are just going to pop in with our ruler. Again, if you don't have a ruler, you can just freehand sketch this, a line this way, and a line from this corner to this corner. Okay. So we're ready to move on with the rest of our door, and we are going to put some detail into this. We are, you know, a little bit more advanced at this point. I know when we were younger, we would probably just put a big circle there and say done. We're going to add some detail to this door to give it more dimension. All right, so inside of this door, I'm gonna do maybe a little bit more complex of a door and do a door that looks more like the door that I have in my own house. So I am gonna come back in with my ruler, and I'm thinking about, I'm gonna lightly sketch it in first, and then I'll come back in with my ruler. I'm gonna put in a rectangle in the top here. I'm gonna lightly sketch this in, and again, this helps me map out my drawing, and then I can go back in and refine it. Okay, just a real light sketch, a border between those two, and a border down here. It's gonna be thicker on the bottom. So I live in an old house here, and my door has a look that looks more like this, with some panels popped into it. Okay, so we have this kind of roughly sketched out, and the next thing we're going to do is just clean that up. So with my ruler, I'm gonna hold that in place. And again, I'm going to keep the width on both sides of the door approximately the same. Okay, so this is a little bit wider on the side, so I will probably extend that out a little bit so that this section here and this section are the same width or the same size. Okay, from there, I'm going to put the top in. My bottom line in, try and keep it parallel to the line above. And then I'm going to come down here. So pretty darn easy so far. Let's go ahead and make this a little bit more interesting. So we have some choices here on how we proceed with the next step. So we could just make it so that it has 4 panels on the inside. I think that's what I'm leaning towards. So when we divide this in half, we're going to think about, again, I'm just going to lightly map this out with a pencil first. So there's going to be a piece of wood coming between this to create 2 panels on the top and 2 panels on the bottom. So I can just go ahead and do a light line in there, connect here to here and here to here. So I'm not going to go through this part. And I'm going to come over here and do the same thing. And then I can adjust the lines if one side looks substantially larger. Okay, so I think that looks fairly decent. So we're gonna leave that how that is. And the next thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna put essentially a very thin border going around the inside of these panels the whole way. Okay, so again, we can sketch this in really lightly. This is going to be really thin, so I'm going to do a really thin line. Actually, I'm just making 4 little points to kind of guide myself for a very thin line here. And this is going to help us later on in our artwork create some dimension, or that illusion of something that is 3-dimensional. So I'm going to put my ruler like this so I can see about how wide the line I'm about to draw is. And again, it's going to be pretty narrow. You do not want it super thick. Okay. All right, we're going to do the same thing on the other side. Okay, so now we've got to put in some lines across the bottom and then we'll put in the final touches on this. So we are going to put lines going across the tops and bottoms of these, and they're going to be about the same width as those lines we just drew. And again, I'm just eyeballing this. I'm not doing an actual measurement. Just kind of lightly sketching that in. And I'm going to pop a line in here with my ruler. I'm going to stop there, my pencil up, and come over to the other side. Okay, do the same thing right here. And there. Hopefully you're seeing that these little details definitely help to create a more realistic door. And they're not really hard. Okay, so now what we're going to do with this is I am going to just clean up some of these lines that I don't need. I'm going to keep this line here. I'm just going to make that a little bit darker. Okay. And then what we're going to do in the corners of these, if you can go in carefully and erase in there. Is that we're going to come in from these corners and do a diagonal line. So we're connecting that like that. I'm going to come down here and do the same thing down here. Those lines back in. All right, and our door is almost done. Okay, so it started out really simple and it looks pretty realistic there. Okay, and that's going to be very important in the final piece. So now what we're going to do is we're just going to add some finishing details. So I'm just going to draw a little circle in. If you want to find a compass or something to help you do a circle, that's fine. I'm just going to sketch it in very lightly. I'm going to put it in right here. That's about where the doorknob is on the doors in my house. Okay. All right, got that. Then we're going to add just right across from the doorknob a little line for the little brass plate that we see. Well, depending on how your house and your doors are set up. And we're going to add some hinges on the other side. So we're going to go about here. Just put a little rectangle in. We can add more detail to these later. I'd have to spend some more time looking at the hinges. And then one up here. I think we may have 3 hinges. I'll have to check on my doors. If there is a 3rd hinge that you want to pop in, you can go ahead and do that. I'm going to leave it at 2 for now. And I may add some detail to these hinges. I think I'm going to do a curved line here and a curved line here for those hinges, just to give them a little bit more dimension. So here and here. If you want to go examine the hinges on your doors at home, please do so. All right, so this is the first step in our new project, okay? Really not too difficult. May take some time just to get the lining cleaned up and things like that. But that's it to start with. We are gonna put in a detail on this side in the next video, but for now, we're gonna leave our work here, and then we'll come back, add another detail, and then we're gonna talk about painting it and what's gonna happen with this artwork to make it really cool. All right, can't wait to see what happens.